Hi everyone, it's Robin from Western Mass. It's March 7th and this is the Morgellons Call of the Week. So glad to be here with you. So I am Richard's co-host. I'm so grateful for this call, and Richard and his book, they helped me get my life back after struggling for almost 4 years with Morgellons and mites and springtails that were brought into my house through other vector insects. And unfortunately last winter I got reinfected when I opened a Pandora's box of Christmas ornaments, and then I got really sick with COVID, so I couldn't deal with it for a long time, months and months. But I am well on the road to wellness, and things are getting better every day. So I'm thrilled to be able to give back and be part of this show. And Richard is very unique in terms of Morgellons because there's so much misinformation and theories that no one can prove really, and the medical profession has mostly dropped the ball about it, but he keeps learning and researching and keeping an open mind. He has a book that just recently came out with the 10th edition, and he's working on the 11th right now because as new facts come to light, he adds them to the book. He created a diet that starves these things out of your body. He has protocols for getting them out of your skin, out of your environment, and it works if you work it. So work it because you're worth it. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Richard Kuhns. So thanks so much. Take it away, Richard.
Thank you, Robin. I like that. Work it if you're worth it, then you're worth it. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to these Sundays to be here for you. The reason that we're here is that I know from personal experience that dealing with these parasites is not easy. It's challenging. It's like learning a new job, and you don't have time for a new job with all that you've got going on. And it takes perseverance. And our goal here, Robin's, Ethel, mine, Barbara's, Sandra's, Chris's, our goal here is to be here for you so that you'll be able to say in the not too far distant future, thanks guys, because of you I hung in, got my life back. That's why we're here. We love success, and the good news is we hear a lot of success. The topic of today's our topic for today is, what the heck is Morgellons? And people have been trying to figure this out for eons. Oh, is that my phone? Whose phone is that? It's not my phone.
Mine.
Yeah, well, we got to edit that one out. It's somebody's phone. Sounded like mine. Okay, so sorry about that. What is Morgellons? What is it? An insect? Is it a worm? Is it bacteria? What causes it? Where does it come from? I mean, there are recordings of it that go way back into the 1600s. I think the fellow, Dr. Baum, way back then, was the first person that recorded something similar to this. Some people have joined the program, have had it for 40 years. So it goes back, was that the 70s or even beyond? It's been around a long time. It seems to be more prevalent today than it was years ago. Why? Is it because we now have the internet and communication is better? Or is there something sinister going on that contributes to it becoming more prevalent? Well, we're going to discuss that today. And what really prompted me to look into this topic for the day is, first of all, I got an email from a lady a week or so ago that said, she said, you're diagnosing Morgellons as a parasite, and it is not a parasite. Well, I asked her where. I don't do any diagnosing. I'm not a doctor. In fact, the FDA requires me to inform every one of you that before you start my diet or accept any of our recommendations, that you thoroughly discuss them with your doctor to make sure they don't interfere with any of your health problems. The AMA requires us to tell you that we're not here to diagnose, to cure, to treat, or mitigate any skin disease or skin disorder. That's out of our realm. We're not here to do that. We're not doctors. We haven't had the training. What we can do is educate. Educate you how to clean them out of your environment, clean them out of your skin, clean them out of your body, and use targeted supplements to get your health and immune functioning back. That's what we're allowed to do. So in further questioning, I found, well, she was referring to the title of my book, How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons and Other Skin Parasites. Well, it's been expanded to say How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons, Chronic Lyme, and Other Skin Parasites. But she was thinking I was equating Morgellons to skin parasites, and I said, well, that's like saying how to get your life back from columbella and other mites. I mean, columbella is an arthropod. Mites are insects. So, you know, okay, well, anyway. Then I got an email from somebody who's saying, Morgellons is an insect that eats concrete. Wow. And I went to the site, and absolutely, there's a site, and I think it's referenced in the update I sent out today. Morgellons eat concrete. Well, an insect that eats concrete. Well, that would say it was a parasite, right? Well, Morgellons is not a parasite. And, I mean, years ago, I've heard of people writing in and telling me that they have organisms, their Morgellons, each through cans, each countertops. Well, at first I thought, well, you know, Morgellons can affect people mentally, and delusions. It can be a part of that. But I got too many of those very specific types of. One advantage I do have is that having been here since the late 90s, I've communicated with thousands, not a couple dozen, but thousands of people that are dealing with Morgellons. What is in common with everybody is the existence of filaments. That's what Dr. Saverly calls them, rather than fibers, which doctors say, well, that's a fiber from your clothing or from sitting on a couch. No, these are filaments. And what I have learned is that Morgellons doesn't manifest itself the same way to any two people. Like, for instance, if we just look at filaments, there's an infinite variety and colors of these filaments. They can be microscopic in size, where you need a 30-power scope to see them, and the only way you might know that you have Morgellons is that they accumulate into fuzz balls, lint-like fuzz balls that you see in your clothing and bedding, and that's a pretty well telltale sign that, yeah, you're dealing with Morgellons. They can be long, they can be stringy, they can be blue, they can be red, they can be white, they can be black, they can move, they can not move. People send me videos of these things moving. So there's many different variations of the filaments itself, okay? Now, some people have goo, black goo, white goo. Some people don't. Morgellons Foundation did research, and they find that 90% of the people that they examined their blood have found spirochetes. That's Lyme disease, two variations. So is it a bacterium? Well, 90% yes, but is everybody? No. The evidence is not conclusive that everybody has bacterium. That's the cause of it. In fact, there's sites, Lyme.org, for instance. You'll go there and you'll see pictures that look very much like Morgellons disease. So 90% of the people have have Lyme disease who have Morgellons. Now, there are books that say Lyme Morgellons is fungal. It's a fungal organism. You go to YouTube and you'll see videos of experts claiming, yep, it's fungal organisms, and they'll show you the fungal organisms floating in the air. Well, I don't doubt that fungal organisms are a part of Morgellons, but I do take exception to the fact that that's true for everybody. So perhaps 90%, maybe 95% do have fungal issues. Now, so we looked at bacterium, we looked at fungi. What else could Morgellons be? It's not an insect. It can parasitize insects. It has the capability of parasitizing nematodes, that's helmets, insects. What else? It can parasitize. But, you know, I've even seen people who have shown me pictures of silicone-like, well, I don't know if it's silicone, it could be, but they're plastic, like barbs coming out of their skin. These barbs could be a ½ inch, a ¾ inch in length, to 3 inches in length. So what causes that? Is that an organism? Is Morgellons contagious? Well, there are opinions on that. The Morgellons Foundation says no. Dr. Saverly says no. But I've gotten dozens and dozens and dozens of emails that says, yes, it is contagious. People have picked it up from being around other people. Now, that's another thing we look at, is what are the factors that have made Morgellons so predominant today? And I think it's the perfect storm. And with me today we have Dr. Dr. John, who was with us last week discussing earthing. And hey, I've made plans to get my blanket already. So my blanket is on order to do earthing. And it's something that I hope everybody on this call is going to be looking into, and I hope to be able to provide a source that will be available so that everybody can have an earthing sheet to sleep upon. So, what are the contributing factors? Well, number one, there's Monsanto and glyphosate, which is Roundup. Roundup is also patented as an antibiotic. And Dr. John, did you know that it's also patented as an anti-scaling formula for use in boilers?
No, I did not know that, and I didn't know it was an antibiotic either.
Yeah, patented as an antibiotic, patented as anti-scaling, which means it interferes with minerals coming into your body. And we get it into our guts through the foods that we eat, and it erodes our, well, it's like years ago there was a big deal about Purdue chickens and the antibiotics they used coming into human consumption, so they've gone to natural things like oregano and what is it, chrysanthemum? No, it's marigolds as natural antibiotics for the poultry industry. Well, glyphosate comes into our food supply through the livestock unless we're eating organic. Now, again, years ago somebody said, well, and informed me about you need to eat organic. I would have said, well, you know, for me it didn't matter whether I ate organic or not. But when we're looking at glyphosate and we're looking at genetically modified organisms, what are genetically modified organisms? Well, today's farmer, he no longer has to cultivate. I grew up on a small farm, and every spring I was out there with a little tractor and my cultivating shears, and I was cultivating the plants. And well, what they now do is they put poisons, insecticides inside the seed, so that if a bug or a worm eats that leaf of that plant, it's going to explode their stomachs. So, you know, And, of course, this toxic material is also in the corn that our livestock eat and that we ultimately eat through our livestock, and is in our bodies as well. So we're getting glyphosate, and we are getting pesticides into our bodies. It used to be you'd wash your fruit off to get rid of the pesticides. Hey, you can't wash it off anymore. Forget it. Plus, I don't know if you want to wash it off with the water out of your tap anymore either. Now, there's another thing on the forefront, 5G. Well, we've talked about EMF for a long time. There's 3G, 4G, 5G. 3G is associated with the
router.
The routers and modems.
That's 3G and 5G. Duffy, you want to go into 5G and the dangers of what it poses for us?
Yes. That, and as you and I talked earlier, there are so many things, and we're being assaulted on so many sides. It's very difficult to try to not focus on so much, and we have to basically take it in little bites and pieces. And I've been studying this stuff for 20 years, and only recently it's just gone crazy. First of all, 5G. We went 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and each one of those allowed us to do something different as far as data, whether it was voice only, then we got pictures, and then we've got videos, and they try to push it on us as though this greater speed that you can download these movies and you can play these games and all, and this is what's so great about it. Well, 5G is a microwave transmission. It's a radio wave of very high frequency. And when the frequencies go higher, the amplitude goes down. Now, in order for them to put 5G into community, these antennas are very small. And when we say millimeters, you have to think a millimeter is just a small space between your fingers. It takes 10 millimeters to make up a centimeter, and so on. Okay? As we think about that, in order for these to be in a community, they have to be on a mailbox. They have to be on a light pole, on the edge of a house, on the edge of a building. And they don't have the power to go through something. So we have to have virtually millions of these. Now, we talked about Elon Musk before. Elon Musk is our enemy. I hate to say it this way, but that's the fact. Several months back, I was sitting in the hot tub. I can't recall if I told you guys about this on last visit, but it's really important to know what's going on. And as I sat there, I noticed up in the sky a little white light going across to the west, and I'm thinking, I was in the hot tub by myself, is that a plane? Is that a satellite? And about that time, here came another one. So I thought, no, it's not a plane. Those are satellites. And then here came another one, and then another one. And I counted 26 in a row in a perfectly straight line. And it frightened me, and I thought maybe we had been invaded by aliens. So I called the Air Force Base up at Whiteman Air Force, which is north of me, to find out if they had that on radar or what was happening. Nobody knew anything about it. As I researched it, I found out that Elon Musk had just launched one of his SpaceX rockets, and it had 60 of these satellites as payloads, each one weighing about 500 pounds, and that's what I was seeing. And he has now been authorized to put some 2,000 of these things up around our space, and then they had what they call a pulsed ion engine that was going to be firing every few seconds, boosting these satellites another 300 miles or so on out into space, with the idea of beaming 5G back down toward the Earth, so that in the deepest jungles of the Amazon and so on, you'll be able to make a cell phone call or use Wi-Fi and make your computer work.
Or drive your driverless car. Driverless cars.
Right, we're going to get to that. Okay. Now, let's come back and look for a moment at what they did in the Iraqi war. They had 5G generating microwave beam types of weapons that they shot toward the Iraqis that were down in their trenches and so on. And those men jumped up out of there and come running toward them with their hands in the air, because what they were doing is every hair fiber on their body, and there's a hair fiber associated with every one of our sweat pores and so on, they act as small little antennas. And so it felt like their skin was actually burning them. And these are the kind of technologies that they plan on using against us. One other thing I'm going to tell you is, going clear back to 9/11, I bought Judy Wood's book, What Happened to the Towers. That book cost $45. I don't know if it's still available, but those were hit by directed energy weapons, the fires out in California, directed energy weapons, and things like that. So we're definitely under attack. Now, with the 5G and the driverless cars and so on, when we name the various big cities that were most hit by COVID, they're going to be Wuhan, going to be Milan, Italy, New York City, the state of Washington, where they had all of the outbreaks in the nursing homes and so on, and also some other cities in Greece. And what they were doing, Wuhan actually rolled out their 5G on December 1, okay? And that's when this 5G has an ability to interfere with the mitochondria, the energy-producing cells of our body, so that we don't have the energy. And once they do that, they also seemingly modify the oxygen molecule so that it's not able to be used appropriately. I'm not sure if it's affecting the hemoglobin or not, but the end result is these people that are affected by this COVID feel as though that they are not able to get enough air. And they don't need to be on a ventilator, they just have to have the oxygen increased. So what's happening is, though they're climbing up the Mount Everest and they don't have the supplemental oxygen, and then they ultimately will die of hypoxemia or decreased oxygenation. So with all that in place,
one other 5G. Thing. One other thing, if I may add. Yeah. Okay, you were talking about the frequency of 5G being such a small. You're talking about millimeters.
Right.
Reference to radio frequencies, electrical current, which a cycle would be like 1,000 miles almost to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. So we're looking at frequencies that are so compact. And what they are actually doing with the 5G, these frequencies actually approximate the frequencies of the electrical signals in our human bodies. And they open up the pathway from the bloodstream into the cell to pass calcium and overload the cell with calcium. And when that happens, the whole system goes out of whack. Immune functioning. Right. You talked about the mitochondria being affected.
Exactly.
So these are biological impacts.
Now, one thing that we can share rather quickly is what you said about the frequencies is important. Now, those of you that are older will remember an AM radio versus an FM radio. AM indicates amplitude modulation. FM is frequency modulation. And the old AM radios, if you were playing one of those and drove in under a power line, you would get a whole burst of static because the transmission was from amplitude modulation, where the FM radio is the frequency modulation is not affected nearly as much by the power line. But any time that you have, as I pointed out, I think earlier, a current carrying wire, you have an electromagnetic force around it. So what's happening is if you have a television tower or a radio tower and they're broadcasting on some frequency that they're going to give you, such and such as 98.3 on the FM band, you can go above or below that and tune into other stations. But in order for that to work and hit the antenna of your car, they have to make and break that signal a number of times so that the magnetic spectrum moves out and then cuts through the antenna, inducing then a current in the antenna that goes down into the radio and then is amplified into whatever it is, whether it's a television or radio or your cell phones work the same way. I really want to point out something, too, for those folks. Cell phones have definitely been shown, because it's a two-way radio transmitter. You should never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, routinely use your cell phone and have it up against your head, because it has been shown to cause tumors of the brain, and you need to use it in its speaker mode, disconnected with earphones or something of that nature. But one thing they've not been pointing out so much is that women that are carrying their cell phones in their back pocket are having a tremendous amount of total hip replacement, and the women that are wearing the cell phones and carrying it in their bra are getting all kinds of breast cancer. So with that being said, that really sums up the 5G. One of the things I didn't mention that we should have is that it's not powerful, that it can't go through buildings, and even rain can shut it down. That's why they need so many millions of them to make it work. Now, they're not going to be able to put them out in the countryside. It's going to be limited to the city, London, Kansas City, Atlanta, New York, places like that. So I'm going to take a great big pause, and then I want us to come back and look at the HARP. And Richard, you had me look at those videos, and I want to touch on what Dana Ashley was saying with the relationship of Morgellons, and I want to talk a little bit about what Andrew Kaufman was saying, which is terribly important, that people should take a look at that particular video on their own, and then they'll have a little bit more for us when we come back and talk later. So my big pause, you have something to say while people are thinking, do they have questions right now to ask?
Well, we'll ask them to ask questions later on, and hopefully everybody's jotted down the phone numbers they need to. The point at this point, getting back to what is Morgellons. Morgellons is not 5G, it's not 3G, it's not glyphosate, it's not GMOs. All these factors factor into the creation of Morgellons. So,
okay.
Duffy mentioned chemtrails. Now, that is the next thing we want to look into.
All right, the chemtrails. Go ahead, keep talking, and then I'll go on.
The reason that we're looking into chemtrails, they've been around since the 1950s. Originally, during experiments to control the weather, to make it rain, like the old Indians years ago did the rain dance kind of thing. And if you research chemtrails, the typical things you're going to come up with on the internet that they want you to see, it's just vapor trails. All right, so that's interesting. These are vapor trails. Well, why do some jets have vapor trails and some jets don't? Why do they crisscross? And why? I live here in Middletown, New Jersey, just south of Newark Airport, and there are 3 major airports in the area, and I don't see any chemtrails. I don't see vapors from any of the jets flying over, and yet I see pictures out west where you see many cross-hatchings in a particular area. And everything I've read and I've looked at for the last few years has been about subjective opinion about, well, what are these things? They're dumping aluminum particles, strontium, titanium, and some other minerals, and they're finding them here and there. But how do they actually work in the body, or what does this have to do? And the video that went out in the update, I hope everybody's had an opportunity to look at it. If you haven't looked at it, until I saw that video, I had so many questions, and that video is quite enlightening. I can't say it's 100% true. I don't know, but it's the first thing that I've looked at that says, well, maybe there's something to this chemtrail theory or whatever. And the basics of it is that there are facilities, and the video actually shows you what these facilities look like. They almost look like a huge electrical transmission that you see in your towns, but they're different than that. They look entirely different. And apparently, the airplanes through the chemtrails drop different elements, whether it be the aluminum or barium, or there's a list of several different elements in the update that went out. And these elements get into our digestive system through the air that we breathe. We end up coughing it up, and gets into our digestive system. And the stomach acidity has an impact on these particulates that we take into our body to formulate crystalline substances of varying, depends on what the experiment is that they might be wanting to do. They create some type of bot in our bodies that are set up for artificial intelligence to feed our heart rate, breathing rate, somehow tune into our thoughts. I mean, this is kind of way out, like the movie The Matrix, to some foreign place. But what apparently happens is, like even with cancer, every one of us have cancer cells in our body, but something happens that makes some type of cancer go rogue and multiply faster than it should. So likewise, maybe it's the glyphosate, maybe it's the 5G, maybe it's or 3G or whatever, maybe it's these other factors that we talked about, make these nanobots go rogue and end up creating Morgellons disease, which is kind of what this theme is about. Now, the one thing that didn't quite make sense to me in the video, and I'll ask you about it, John, is that the fellow there is saying that when it goes crazy, silicone, I think he referred to the filaments as being a silicon-based. But actually, the research that I looked at or here is that the filaments are collagen and keratin, and they're amino acids comprised of carbon, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen. So I am a little confused about that. The other thing is that this theory would explain that you would spontaneously be subject to Morgellons. In other words, you're going along and eating your life, and then by some point you've consumed enough glyphosate that would kick Morgellons into play, and you'd be more. But most people that I know of, the thousands that I've communicated with, they pick up Morgellons from something. It's either from flying mold and dealing with backed up sewers, or sitting on an airplane seat where somebody else sat, or in contact with the filaments and fibers, somebody coughing on them. There's a contagious aspect involved. It may be that the 5G and all the EMF and all these things provide the environment, because not everybody is susceptible to Morgellons. Not everybody contracts it, so it may be connected there. So what do you think about that, Dr. John?
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the silicon base, and from what I've seen and studied, these filaments are the keratin or collagen, and they state that your body produces them. Let's point out a moment.
Oh, are you saying the filaments? Excuse me. Are you saying the filaments are not actually carbon, collagen, and keratin as they report?
No, I agree with you. I've seen more in the fact that they are keratin and collagen, and the body goes into overdrive to manufacture these filaments. And this fact of the silicone base is kind of new to me, and I got to spend more time with it. But now, those of you that have called in and have looked at what's going on, the two links that Richard put on the site today, I had looked at both of them quite extensively, and I'm going to look at the second one as far as Morgellons and the Chemtrail Association. And I found that quite accidentally by putting in Morgellons and chemtrails. I just threw those two words in, and that article came up. But now Dana Ashley is the one that is the one above that on the site that you put in. And she's talking about the Morgellon fibers and so on, and we don't have the name of the guest that she had basically that was doing the talking in the background. But his family was attacked. His mother ended up dying on the way to the hospital. These young people were having these blood clots and so on from basically being attacked. Now, one thing you mentioned a little bit ago about these arrays, the HAARP, and they say these are not the harps that angels play. It's spelled like harp, but there's two A's in there, and that stands for High Altitude Aural, AURAL, Research Project. Now, Jesse Ventura, I think, is a good person. Remember, he was the ex-wrestler, Minnesota governor, and so on. I read his books and what have you, and he had, for a period of time, conspiracy theories show on television, and he was getting too close to the truth because he went up into Alaska right outside one of our largest HARP facilities, and they basically chased him away. Now, what they're doing with these are towers of high-energy radio waves that they're shooting up into the atmosphere.
The video is important for everybody to look at. This segment is more theoretical or hypothetical, perhaps hypothetical than theoretical, as we're looking into it.
Right.
And basically, the reason I'm getting into it is that the chemtrails, there is an article on the Morgellons site that, and if they give it credence, there's no reason why we shouldn't look into it. Of course, our main focus is not, I used to think, well, there's not much we can do about it. Whatever's causing it, not much we can do about it. But yes, we can. We can get involved in politics and locally and get rid of 5G in our towns. They've done it in eastern Connecticut. They've done it in one of the islands in Hawaii. We can take, and there's several articles I've been putting out about 5G. So we can get involved. Now, about the chemtrails, I don't know where our in is because, according to the video, even the politicians are in the dark. Even the president is in the dark.
Let me address that, because chemtrails, I've known about them and studied them for years, and there's a fellow named Dane Wigington who is one of the real gurus of it, and the chemtrails are exactly what they are, although Dane Wigington says it's better to call it geoengineering. Now, they are definitely spraying aluminum, barium, strontium. They're spraying desiccated red blood cells, human red blood cells, dog feces, and they've also put lithium in up there. And there is a gentleman who worked for the Forest Department out in Lake Shasta in Northern California, where Dane Wigington home overlooks that. It said the aluminum level has gone completely off the chart, and even in the high mountain lakes that have no way of having water come into them from other sources, the aluminum is off the chart. Now, the aluminum builds up in the substantia nigra and causes Alzheimer's disease. So we've had a virtual epidemic of senile dementia and Alzheimer's. And now, I'm a private pilot, and these chemtrails or geoengineering only occur at altitudes greater than 30,000 feet. And you can tell a chemtrail versus a contrail. Contrail is natural water vapor and exhaust from jets, and it will dissipate within a mile or two behind the aircraft. If you see an aircraft goes across the sky, goes from one side to the other, leading this, and sometimes it'll be put, 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 put. Sometimes they'll turn off and shut them on and off according to the spray systems. And these spray things, they've done some by putting the chemicals in the jet fuel, but most of it is with nozzles on the backs of the wings that not even associated with the engines. And I've got a lot of pictures that I've taken myself, and we have what's called Victor airwaves in the United States for traffic patterns. So if an airplane is flying from, I can tell you this, from Kansas City to Denver, that airway is 8 miles across, and he's right in the middle of it. So he can go 4 miles this way or 4 miles that way, using GPS and autopilot, he flies on the Victor airway, whatever that airway is numbered, and that's it. So when you see these planes that are up there making tic-tac-toe marks, cross-hatching, going around in circles and whatever, you'll see them always coming out whenever we got a beautiful sky. I got sprayed here like crazy today, and that then it makes our whole sky into what I call just an you know what type of sky, and it's so disappointing to me. So what they say there, that fella that's talking on that Dana Ashley that's on the site today said that these chemicals that are coming down are just what you mentioned. You said earlier, we cough them up, they go down in there to the stomach, but you might want to, you know, mention or even look at that video. They're showing that, you know, the boron, for example, it can be an antidote. Now, do I know all these things for fact? Would I base somebody's life on them? I don't know. But one thing I would like to offer is this. Just like that picture I showed at the beginning. I have no idea what that is, but it looks very much like an organic thing, like something that has grown in nature or what have you. Now, when people say that they're reinfected, they have the mites, the springtails, you know, robin, and so on, I would like to have some specimens that I can look at under my microscope, both compound and dissecting.
Where would you like them? Where would you like specimens sent? I think we can get you 1,000 specimens. Where would you like them sent? And how would you like them sent?
They need to be sent to me in either alcohol or formalin. And what I plan on doing with them is studying them.
Formaldehyde?
Yeah, formalin is not formaldehyde per se, but either one of them will work as a preservative. And when you send them to me, just be sure you've got them in something plastic, not glass, with a very tight cap. Seal that, and then put some tape over it so that it can't get out of there. Then put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in a little package and mail it to me, and I'll be happy to look at those things and start really studying them from the viewpoint. You know, I'm an environmental biologist. My undergraduate is biology, and I was trained in the military to be a lab technician.
What's your mailing address? What address do you want them to come?
On that website that I gave earlier, the downtooearthmedicine.org has all contact information on it.
Okay. All right, everyone, you heard that. Collect your samples, put them in. Now, you're saying a plastic bag with...
just a Ziploc bag, and then just put it in a little box or an envelope so it gets to me safely.
All right, but you wanted them in a formalin or what else? What else?
Formalin or alcohol.
Alcohol.
A little plastic jar with a screw top lid. Put some tape over it so the lid can't get jarred in shipping. Then put it in a Ziploc bag, and then put it in a little box or whatever to get it to come to me. And I will take pictures of it, video or still, whatever we need, and try to figure out, in fact, just really what is going on there.
Now you're going to want to know where it was sampled from, if it was sampled from the skin or if it was sampled from the environment.
Exactly. And
okay.
Anybody that, if you pull a little filament out of your skin and you think you'd like to have that looked at, I don't have the ability to chemically analyze these or whatever. But the young man that I showed you that picture at the beginning of this session, he has shown me some videos where he's pulled some of these fibers out with tweezers and subjected them to a very powerful little, almost like a propane or little Bunsen burner, you know, butane type thing, and cooks them, and they just glow and they don't really burn up.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the hope. You mentioned the word and you mentioned the substance, but we didn't put any emphasis on it because if you watch the video and you look into chemtrails and look into all the stuff that's bombarding and hope, you know, what's our hope? Well, for 5G, get involved locally, politically, to get it out of the town or wherever you live. Ban it. Get it. You know, if enough of them do it. Well, if enough of them do it.
Can you hear me a minute?
Yeah.
What I was just going to throw into the mix is the United Kingdom has been totally bombarded by this. And it seems like the Europeans are much more, how would I say, active to try to straighten things out. And so there's been quite a number of these 5G towers and so on that have basically been torn down or burned up or something of that nature. So they're just not sitting back and waiting. They're actually taking action. And I'm not suggesting that, but I don't know that I have a good answer. It's very frustrating.
Right. So politically, excuse me, now with glyphosate, many countries have banned it. I recently read where they're trying to get Mexico to approve some of Monsanto's stuff that has been banned there. So hopefully countries get smart and keep banning Monsanto and their creations. Now with the, what can we fight back with the chemtrails? Well, the antidote is said to be boron, which is borax. And the video, the fellow says the antidote for Morgellons to deal with these things that, these crystalline forms in our bodies, if you want to call them bots, but these crystalline entities that are created in the body is to, that go crazy, is borax. He suggests a couple of pinches a day in water. I forget exactly when to take it, but it's in the video. Rather than depend on your pinch size, we have boron tablets in our store. We have two. We have regular boron, and then there's another boron that has different variations of boron in it. And then to alkalize the system. Now, what they recommend in the video is apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is fantastic with a mother if you only have Morgellons. But if you have also Columbella, and 90%, well, 85–90% of the questionnaires I've evaluated indicate that people are also dealing with Columbella, and you do not want to drink apple cider vinegar until you get into late stage 2 or stage 3 of the diet. So how do you alkalize your body? Well, our ionic minerals do an excellent job of that. You put the sachet in your bottle of water, and your pH goes to 10.5. So it's a perfect way to alkalize your body. Last week we talked about blood cells clumping in your body, in your veins and arteries, and this also unclots the blood cells so they can carry the maximum amount of oxygen and not clog up your arterial systems. Well, I guess that concludes this portion of the program. I want to thank you, Dr. John, for making yourself available, and look forward to having you back again sometime soon.